What's up, and welcome to a Locked On Lakers for Friday. We are going to take a comprehensive look at all things Luka and the Lakers. That is coming up next.
You are Locked On Lakers, your daily Los Angeles Lakers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And thanks for making Locked On Lakers your first listen every day, Monday through Friday, always free. It's never behind a paywall. And Locked On Lakers on YouTube for the sickos who like to watch. A community of over 36,000 subscribers coming together, watching the show. They're really engaged, smart, funny, active, often leaving comments. We try to implement those comments into the show, make our audience part of the programs. And however you're taking in Locked On Lakers, we appreciate it very much. I'm Andy Kamenetsky, my brother and co-host Bryant remains on vacation this week, so continuing our slate of revolving guests. Today I'm talking with basketball writer Iztok Franko. He is a Slovenian basketball writer. He has been covering Luka Dončić before and now during his time in the NBA and has been all over this next chapter of Luka's career with the Lakers. I've known about Iztok for a while, but this is the first time we've had a chance to talk. I'm really excited about this. Zdravo, Iztok.
Nice Slovenian. Thanks. And well,
I've been sucking up to a lot of our new audience, Iztok. I've been pandering pretty shamelessly.
You're almost on Kobe level of Slovenian.
So, before we get into some of your thoughts on Luka and the Lakers and the season ahead, all that stuff, can you provide our audience a bit just about your background?
Yeah, I have a, let's say, not traditional background. When we were talking before the chat, let's say I'm not a typical NBA writer or journalist. So I followed NBA for a long time, more than 30 years, but got into, let's say, more the analysis part, the data part, let's say 6-7 years ago, when I started following more up close Luka and the Mavericks. And then really got into it, studied how the game is analyzed. I was really fascinated by the whole analytics movement, history of the NBA, and just wanted to know how NBA teams dissect the game. I was lucky enough to get in touch with people with some, let's say, front offices that do analytics, and I'm still in touch. So that was always the part that, let's say, inspired me the most. And then the process of writing is just trying to create meaningless stories from the data, from the film, from the things that you see on the court.
And you referenced Digging Basketball. That is your Substack that people
Yes.
can check out your work at. Very prolific, very interesting, smart breakdowns of stuff going on in the NBA, and in particular with Luka. When you think about the beginnings of Luka's career in Spain, in Slovenia, what jumps out at you most?
I mean, just how he was always a couple of steps ahead when it comes to what competition he was playing. Even when he was 10 years old, they put in competing against 13-year-olds. And then at Real Madrid, and it's a well-known story how he made his first game for the senior team with 16 and then won everything when he was 18, 19. But probably, I think most people in the US still don't know how that's really unprecedented, especially on a team like Real Madrid, which is like the Lakers of the NBA, very veteran-led team. There is not really been a player so young that would be the best player on the team, MVP and the best team. If you look at the movement now with NIT in the US, because there is a huge movement of young European players playing to US, to college, even from Slovenia. I think we had 4 or 5 peoples going over. And it's not only the money. What the players say, okay, money is great. They earn mostly more than they would in Europe at that age. But it's also playing opportunity and competition, because young player, 18, 19, they don't play in Europe significant roles. And Luka not only played a significant role, he was the best player on the team.
How would you put in perspective just how big of a deal Luka is in Slovenia? Because we understand it from an Americanized point of view, how big of a deal he is in the NBA, and now especially when he's with the Lakers, the Tiffany franchise of the NBA. one of the biggest in sports, period. But just how big of a deal Luka is in his home country.
Yeah, I said this plenty times. I think he's our first and I would still say only superstar meaning in global appeal, not only sports, but I would say music, politics, culture. Which is funny because sports right today, I don't know if any people watch Tour de France. We have the best cycler in the world. He's leading Tour de France by 4 minutes, and he's literally in the greatest of all time discussions. I think he will end up. And cycling is a huge sport. But when you look at the cultural effect of basketball, Luka being in the US, now with the Lakers, I think it's another thing that even enhanced his stardom, global stardom. He being a Jordan Brand athlete, I think, and his history. And I think the interesting part with Luka is he's not only a star in Slovenia or followed in Slovenia, but he has a huge following in Spain.
Yeah.
Because of his Madrid days, he's like, when I did a story on him a couple of years ago when the Mavericks played in Madrid, their game, exhibition game, Spanish people said he's our son, basically, because he grew up there. He speaks Spanish fluently. I think he likes the most speaking in Spanish when he's doing interviews. And then also a couple of years ago, there was a World Cup in the Philippines. He's amazingly popular there, so in Asia. So I think that all makes him, like I said, this superstar, and he's covered as such here in Slovenia. So every day there is a story on the news about him. When the Lakers have games, it's always about that game and what he's doing, and stuff like that.
People talk a lot about the similarities between Luka and LeBron in terms of the basketball IQ, the style of play. Like Luka is in some ways a younger version of LeBron, like not always. Like Luka on his best day is not as athletic as LeBron, like on his worst day, but there are a lot of commonalities. But I've thought about before how I think Luka and LeBron can potentially relate, just in the aspect that they're both kind of the sports equivalent of child stars, like child movie or TV actors. Like they've both been extremely famous, like when they were young teenagers and propped up for massive stardom in a way that like few people, even like other NBA superstars, can really relate to, like for how long that's been going on. Does that seem to you like something that they can, I guess, either relate to or maybe even bond on, like that sort of commonality?
Yeah, for sure. I think they even talked about how they look up or respect each other. And I think, yeah, like I said, that early prodigy type, although Luka was not such a prodigy in NBA. When he got there, he was the first pick and people doubted him. But in Europe, he was. So, and in his mind and his road to there, the success he had, you could say that he had much more success before joining the NBA than LeBron did. But I think, and also I think now when you look at their careers, the early struggle, because LeBron had to go through a lot to win his first championship, despite the talent. And I think the mental struggle of NBA not being, I would use the word, I don't know, as easy as it was before, or as it successful. I think it's part of both of their paths that they had to. We are seeing, hopefully, and I think there are a lot of signs with Luka now this summer, and we saw with LeBron basically that it took him some time to figure some things out in his basically path. He also had to change the team, but basically there was the struggle to get to this ultimate goal that was expected from probably both even earlier in their careers, I think.
All right, coming up, I want to start getting more into Luka's NBA career, both with the Mavericks and now with the Lakers. So we will get into that coming up next. Locked on Lakers is brought to you by Game Time. Have you ever decided at the last minute you wanted to go to the ball game with friends or family, maybe even game day, and you want to be in those stands, but you're trying to figure out how? That is where Game Time comes in. It's the easiest way to buy last minute tickets without the stress. And with the money that you save on those tickets, you can splurge on food or drinks, merchandise, just the entire experience. Game Time makes it possible. Game Time makes buying tickets fast and simple. The prices on the app actually drop the closer you get to the first pitch, and they've got incredible last minute deals, clear seat views, and a lowest price guarantee that takes the worry out of buying. And Game Time is the official ticketing partner of Locked On MLB, which makes it easy to browse the app for an exciting game at, let's say, Dodger Stadium, where I know a lot of Laker fans spend their offseason. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use the code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem the code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off. Download the Game Time app. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. So now, Iztok, moving on to Luka's NBA career. We know that Luka was shocked when the Mavericks traded him to the Lakers. How shocked were you?
I mean, it was crazy. I woke up Sunday morning, I remember, and typically I don't I have notifications off, only SMSs, things like that. And there was a journalist from our national television who sent me a text that was like earthquake with the subject. So I only saw that, and I asked my son, because wake up, it was Sunday, he woke up before me. Did you feel anything? It's like an earthquake, and then we started watching the news. It was okay. I know what you mean. So, and the funny story from that day was, because we started doing 2 years ago for these European Pride Time games, we started doing telecast in studio with Luka's father, some other people on our sports television. And we had the game scheduled for that day. It was like a Mavericks Cavs game. And then it was like, will his father show up? Will we do the game? What we will do on that game? And it turned out he showed up. We had a lot of fun, discussing. And even the broadcast, I did a broadcast with one other guy. It was like a 2-hour podcast about the trade, because it was a meaningless game, but it was a crazy day.
Yeah,
I think it was one of the longest days I remember.
Luka's dad seems like a pretty outspoken, pretty big character in his own right. The narrative of Luka and poor body maintenance, bad fitness habits, however you want to put it, which that's been connected by some people to Luka's injury history or general conditioning that could be better. How fair do you think that either the coverage of this or the way that it has been discussed has been with Luka, or like how much validity do you think there is to this being a conversation?
Coverage, like in most cases, it's gonna be more this polarizing, and especially a topic like this, it will end up in a polarizing way, one way or another. I think for sure part of the narrative, or the, let's say, criticism is valid. Luka cannot hide from that, and we see that this season there's a lot of talk about him improving or working on his body. Mm-hmm. I think the part where there is, let's say, context, or when you try to put that more in the context, is also the path that he had with the Mavericks. In a lot of cases, his past teams were poorly built, or were built in such way that he had to carry a great load during the regular season, and then he would break down as the season would progress. Even in the season that when they had the most success in 2023, 2024, when they made the finals, I don't know if the Laker fans followed that team that closely, but in the first part of the year, they didn't have a center. They didn't manage to find joint narrative to the Lakers. So they drafted Derek Lively. He was good, but he was a rookie and injured a lot. Kyrie Irving got injured in the first part of the season, missed, I think, almost 25 games. So Luka had to carry a huge load just for the Mavericks to hang around 500. And then they made a trade for Gafford, for PJ Washington. Kyrie got back, and then they made their run and been like one of the best teams in the NBA. But I think that caught up to him in the finals, because it was such a long season and such a high burden. But like I said, I think it's for sure, it's the area of his game that I think he's sure as well would probably admit that where he has room for improvement.
And now that the shock of all this, I think, is worn off for Luka and being in this new setting, how do you like the pairing between Luka and a huge market franchise like the Lakers? Like, Luka seems to enjoy the spotlight and the stage, like the bigger the moment, the better. But I've heard him talk about himself as more of a low-key guy. I've gotten the impression that he's not particularly into dealing with media. Not like he's rude or uncooperative, like at least in my experience, but he doesn't seem to like it. And there's a lot of that comes with being a Laker. Like, do you think this is a good match for Luka?
I think JJ mentioned this before on some podcast, something like he's like a killer or completely different person that once he steps on the floor and completely different person off the court. And that's true. And it's everything you mentioned. So I think he likes the biggest stage. I think like we are talking about Spain, Real Madrid. I think he enjoyed that stage being on the most glamorous club. I think he likes playing in front of the stars in LA. He likes to perform. He's a performer, basically. And I think what he has in common with a lot of stars, he finds motivation in this kind of moments. So he's always seeking for some kind of spark to spark his emotion, because this is where typically then he plays his best. But off the court is, I think, everything you mentioned. I don't think he enjoys that at all. He's not like a big exposure person. But one thing that he mentioned, and I think it's true, because you see how he spends his summer. He likes the ocean. He likes the seaside. He likes the weather. So I think he enjoys LA very much.
It's funny you bring up the idea of Luka finding the sparks and the motivations. And I think for a lot of athletes like him, the slights, like the things that you can read into as in some way dissing you or some way being disrespectful, and you turn that into motivation. Kobe was famous for it, MJ, LeBron, down the line. It's interesting. You wrote a piece for Diggin' Basketball about Marcus Smart joining the team and Luka being a part of that recruitment. And part of your piece is, quote, "I still remember watching their battles when Smart was in Boston, later in Memphis. There was always a sense of mutual respect, and you could see how much both players embraced the challenge of going head to head." And I thought that was interesting because, like, Luka is known as a guy in the league that kind of relishes feuds and like really gets into the idea of very personalized feuds. Like Devin Booker is one of the highest profile cases of this. But it seems like with someone like Marcus Smart, it always remained like a professional respect. Is there like a giveaway or like the equivalent, like a poker tell, or like a common attribute that you've noticed when it comes to Luka and the opponents, that he respects them and it's purely like a professional rival as opposed to someone like, again, Devin Booker, that it seems like Luka genuinely enjoys beating this guy and making him look bad?
Yeah, I think with the Smart, let's say, relationship or respect came from early in Luka's career, where Smart was in Boston. And I think that team with Smart, with Jaylen Brown, with Tatum, with some other vets, they kind of tried to test him, kind of bully him. And I don't know if you remember, he hit like 2 game winners against the Celtics in the regular season.
There's been a lot of them.
In 2 consecutive seasons.
Yeah.
So I think that's where if you hear Smart, he's saying, "Oh, Luka magic is real," and I think that's where the respect comes from Smart's side. So I think Luka, I think, like you said, he on the court, he would try to find an edge. He would try to, especially when he's on the game, he would try to get you in his head. He's like, when he's on his game and when he is like trash talking, I think he's one of the most demoralizing players to play against, because when his step back three is falling, you cannot do anything. And you can saw, I don't know, in finals, Western Conference Finals last year, guys like Anthony Edwards who say like, he just kicked our ass. And Ant is like the most confident person, and he was like completely demoralized in that series. But I think Luka, in that sense, is similar to Ant, that he doesn't have problem giving credit to good defenders. I don't know, he would always say like Marcus Smart is a great defender, or he would say Lu Dort, he's one of the best defenders, he's defending me well. So he's not like, I don't know, being this arrogant when he's talking about his peers around the NBA.
All right, coming up, I want to get more into this upcoming season with Luka and the Lakers, and some of your thoughts about the best ways that the Lakers can go about utilizing Luka and scheming for him, as somebody who's covered Luka for a long time. So we'll get into that coming up next. So what do you make of this Lakers team as currently constructed around Luka?
I mean, it's certainly better than it was where they ended up last year. That's no doubt. So they brought 3 players. They lost Dorian, who basically I love, one of my favorite players because I watched him in Dallas. But I think we saw in the playoffs kind of certain limitations of his archetype and where the NBA is going. So I think they feel they go, and of course, filling the center gap with DeAndre Ayton, then Marcus Smart, Jake Larivia, even the draft. So I think they're certainly better. I think there was a discussion before the offseason, what would you think of as a successful Lakers season? I said if they find one long-term fit starting piece and just evened out some of the, let's say, imbalances in the starting 5. So I think I could not say they did that. Aton could be that, Smart could be that, Laravia long-term could be that, but there is not one clear piece that say, okay, this is a building block that we will see in Lakers uniform next to Luka for next 3 years. So I think that to me I would be really pleased, but I think especially given the context and given how they got to this point, not using the assets so they can still make a move down the line. I wrote on Digging Basketball a lot about that I think Rob Pelinka and the front office bought them time and goodwill to make this next move, hopefully the move that I was talking about, with much more maneuver position and much more time and less pressure.
In what ways do you think Luka and LeBron can blend their skills more? Just like how, whether in terms of how they're used together, the approaches, actions that could be run for them, that sort of thing?
I think just chemistry. Luka talked about that. I hate the comparison because there's all the time, but I think it's true. We saw some similar things with Kyrie. First half a season, it was the same, trade deadline acquisition. And I think what we saw in Luka's career, he actually plays, I think he doesn't have a problem. He plays well with another dominant ball handler because they can take turns. He respects players like Kyrie, like LeBron. So I think there is just these small nuances in chemistry when is somebody's time to go, how to find it. I think passes Luka to Kyrie in the second season was much better. I think transition was a huge thing with LeBron, like just easy points for LeBron, even playing some actions off one of each other. So I think just chemistry. I think it's gonna make a lot of difference this second season.
I imagine too, also from Luka's perspective, there's a bit of an awkwardness to get through, like with LeBron, not because LeBron is uncomfortable with Luka being there or Luka uncomfortable with LeBron, but just like the idea of LeBron was here before. He's, been there many years. He's LeBron James, like, his stature is, arguably the greatest player in NBA history, plus a guy that Luka has talked about openly idolizing when he was younger. And the idea of not wanting to step on LeBron's toes or seem like you are in any way nudging the guy out the door or, into less of an area of importance, especially with everybody knowing at this point, this is Luka's team. Like everybody knows everything now revolves around Luka in ways that is LeBron, frankly, is not used to. And I think that in and of itself requires a little bit of a sensitivity in the way you handle it.
Yeah, and I also think LeBron is smart enough. I think the point that you said is really true. You could see it, especially in the first games, that Luka was really sometimes looked like out of place. Basically trying to find, he was never in the position not to be the main piece, the main player, the main cog in the offense. So I think that part, this season is going to be much more natural, much more comfortable, the chemistry. But also I think with LeBron as he ages, I think he's smart enough to know that easy points and less pressure, that he will still be able to get, that his life can be a lot easier playing off Luka. So I think he's smart enough, and I don't expect Luka's game to change that much as I expect LeBron, not necessarily to change the game, but just use his IQ and use his skill, because he has such a diverse skill set even at his age and athleticism, that I think he can really prolong and maintain, let's say, his freshness throughout the season just playing off Luka more.
What are you picturing in terms of Luka and DeAndre Ayton as a tandem? And do you consider him the type of center that Luka looks for or prefers to have?
I mean, the second part, I would probably say no, because everything that was out of the Lakers and the Mark Williams trade, and even in Slovenian national team, it's always the rim running role big, athletic big. But I was one of the first on the DeAndre Ayton idea, because my concept the whole time was I would like to see Luka more like a center. I was always using Ivica Zubac as a reference, because a more skilled guy who can punish you in the post, who can hit the hook shot, who can play the pick and roll, but also on the short roll, who is physically strong to punish switches, so much more diverse. And DeAndre Ayton jumped out to me when I was thinking about as the only comparable but available big. So I think Luka eventually, what we saw in his career, he can make it work with any big. I used in my the DeAndre Ayton deep dive, I used a comparison of Christian Wood, who you guys know, and because he moved from the Mavericks to the Lakers.
Yeah.
But his half a season with the Mavericks, he was legitimately, I'm not joking, people had him in all-star conversations.
I know.
Playing next to Luka. So he was averaging, I think, 17 and 7 for the season, but as a starter, he was like a 20 and 10 guy. And he's a similar, let's say, in a way that a lot of people doubt his motor, that they doubt how dedicated it is to the game, but not his talent. And I think Luka will find ways to leverage DeAndre Ayton's skills. I think he still can be a rim roll finisher, but he has much more other skills. So on offense, I think the pairing can work, and they will unleash each other, basically. Not only Luka unleashing Ayton, but we saw last season, at the end of the season and the playoff, that the only pick and roll partner basically for Luka, the main pick and roll partner, was Rui Hachimura, which is not ideal for his game. So I think having a big that can set screens that he can use to manipulate, to get to the rim, to find lobs, to create breakdowns, to create corner threes, I think Ayton will be good for that.
The question of Luka and defense, that's dogged him a lot for criticism through his career thus far, like since Luka's joined the Lakers, and I've been really watching him on a game in, game out basis. In my opinion, I don't think Luka's defense is as bad as its reputation, but it's certainly not his strong suit. And he does get targeted. I'm not always sure it's the best approach, but it happens regardless. How important, before even getting to your thoughts on Luka as a defender, like strengths and weaknesses, from the time that you've spent covering him, how important do you think defense is to Luka? Like just that side of the floor in general?
I think the main thing with Luka, it's not only defense, but in general, it's like making it competitive.
Right.
So sometimes in the regular season, and I saw this from friends who I have even on the national team, it's like just challenging him. And we saw this in different stages of his career, games, playoffs, when he puts his mind to it, when he sees this as a challenge, he would most often step up to it. You were mentioning Devin Booker. If you remember that Western Conference Finals in 2022, Chris Paul and Devin Booker were killing Luka in pick and roll. He looked like a lot. It was like this year Timberwolves series. So the Suns were up 2-0, and Luka was saying everybody's tough when they're up, acting like this famous line. But then in the next series, he started to, Jason Kidd and the others, they challenged him. He stepped up, and I think he defended competently, or let's say competently, for the rest of the series. So I think that's one part of it. He's also good in a lot of areas defensively that are not as visible maybe as one-on-one isolation defense. So like rebounding, defensive rebounding, being able to switch on bigger guys. I think if you look this playoff series, I think he was probably the best at defending Julius Randle.
Yeah.
All other guys struggled more against him. And that's, again, individual challenge that I think, go ahead.
I was going to say, like, it's interesting because you often hear for a guy like Luka, who is both a star player with a very heavy offensive load, but somebody who has a reputation as he has a reputation as a negative defender, like he's a minus defender. And often for guys like that, the scheme will be try to find an assignment for him that is the least taxing, the least responsibility, less for him necessarily to do. In some respects, it sounds like the way to bring out the best in Luka might be to give him a more difficult assignment, like that actually brings out more in him, even acknowledging it could make his load for the game more difficult, but it might bring out the best version of him defensively.
Sometimes, yes. I think there was a game, I think this season or last, I don't know, I mean last or one before with the Mavericks, and Kevin Durant was killing them, and he was basically took the task of defending him for the second half. So that's one case. But I think also it's a little bit about context or the environment around him. I think this year, especially in the playoffs, the Lakers were so small that I think the whole team as a whole just physically and I think mentally broke down fighting Rudy Gobert, Randall, Naz Reid, just wrestling with them for 4 games and playing all these minutes. I think they were like just physically not capable of, let's say, playing overly aggressive defense. And what we saw in Dallas in that, let's say, finals team or that team that basically was all of a sudden made the run of defense. They were basically, before they ran into the Celtics in the finals, they were basically winning every series with defense. I think when the Mavericks put athletic defenders around him, like Derrick Jones Jr., Derek Lively, PJ Washington, guys that could make these athletic defensive plays. I think you could see spark in Luka's eyes, like this competitive fire that it would hype him up, and they would go in transition, or he would get hyped up even off teammates' plays and for defense. So I think that's why I was saying he's such an emotional player and guy that sometimes he needs some situations and things like that, especially in the regular season, to pick up his energy.
Yeah, and over at Digging Basketball, again, the Substack that you write that people should check out, really good deep dives into Luka, now Luka with the Lakers. You noted, and I did not know this until you pointed it out, that Luka has yet to play alongside an all defense level defender. Like none of his teammates have ever won a spot on the all defense team or even come that close. And, you noted someone like Derek Lively, for example, might get there one day, but for the time that Luka played with him, wasn't there, wasn't close to that. So contextually, there's the question of just putting, as you'd mentioned, like the best defenders around Luka, assuming skinny Luka, the photos that you referenced before are like a real thing. Do you think that could improve his defense, just being lighter on his feet?
Yeah, for sure. I think. I mean, also it's depending the position he's going to defend, because when we were talking about before defending Julius Randle, I think there is where size and strength help you. But I think Luka, a lot of was talking about his athleticism, his acceleration, this famous P3 testing before the drafts, his acceleration, like being elite, like Jace Harden. And this is one part of his athleticism that's elite that people don't often think about it. But the other part, I think, is just his natural strength. Right. Even if you look at his father, he has the same body. It's like a huge guy, really strong legs. I think I don't think he will lose that much of that, even if he's losing some of his weight. But that's my opinion, but we'll see.
And then last question for you, the one that has been on every Laker fan's mind, and frankly, everybody inside the offices in El Segundo. Do you think he signs the extension this offseason?
Yeah, I think just yesterday, the Slovenian national team started their training camp for the Eurobasket. Luka cannot join until, I think, early August because of the NBA rules. And the national coach said that he will join them around August 1st, but he's going to US to fix care of some business or something like that. So I don't want to misquote him. There was even an article that says somebody mentioned it's going to be a 4-year deal. So that to me was a big surprise. I don't know if that's accurate. But I think everything indicates, if that's true, that he's going to US. I don't know why he was going there otherwise, because the national team will play a big exhibition game on August 8th. I plan to go to that game against Germany, World Cup. Typically, they do this big game in Ljubljana in front of his home crowd, because he's such a star that we talked. So I'm very much assuming he's going to play in that game. So I think he's going to want to come back. And if that is the business that he's going to take care, and everything that we saw from recruiting of Smart, from his statement when the new owners were announced, I think there is no doubt that he's going to sign the extension.
All right. Well, our audience truly now loves you, Iztok Franko. Iztok Franko, again, the Substack Digging Basketball. You should check it out. Really smart coverage of Luka and the Lakers. This was really awesome finally to meet you. Really appreciate the time. Havala, Iztok, Havala.
Thank you, Andy. And looking forward to some other chats in the future.
Yeah, definitely. We'll do this again. Sunday into Monday, we will be joined by Jovan Buha's Block. Great Lakers coverage. We're going to break down some of the stuff that's happened over the offseason as well. Until then, again, appreciate everybody subscribing to Locked On Lakers on YouTube, listening on audio. Please subscribe. And again, thank you to everybody for being here, and we will see you on Monday.